All right, hi everybody. Thank you all so much for being here today. My name is Rofaida Abdelrahman. I am a senior in industrial engineering, and this is my presentation, One Conversation Away, How Relationships and Reflection Shape the Leaders That We Become. So one thing that I was told once was that opportunities don't come in perfectly planned moments. They come from small interactions, introducing yourself, asking a question, starting a conversation that you almost didn't have. And I've noticed this to be incredibly true in my life, and that is why I believe that you are always one conversation away from a life-changing opportunity. I've always loved about college and about Purdue, just the mix of people that you find yourself surrounded by. Every single day you walk somewhere on this campus, you meet somebody from a different walk of life, coming from different countries, different families, different interests, and have different goals. And every once in a while, you realize how much you can learn by just stopping and talking to someone whose life is different from yours. And before coming to West Lafayette, I moved around quite a bit growing up. I lived in 8 different cities across 5 different countries, from Cairo to Tokyo to Toronto to Jeddah. And every move meant starting over. And at the time, it felt chaotic, yes, but in hindsight, it taught me incredible values. See, when you move that often, you quickly learn that every place has people who think differently, live differently, and see the world through a completely different lens. And if you're open to it, those perspectives will lead to your own personal growth, sometimes about culture or about work or even about life. But the common thread is always the same. People shape the way that we view the world. What's interesting is that the interactions that end up mattering the most might not seem that important at the time. They're often small interactions like sharing food or sitting next to someone or asking a question, but occasionally, one of those moments can change your direction in a way you never anticipated. And that's exactly what happened to me last summer during my internship with United Airlines. I was working in airport operations at Chicago O'Hare, and every day was a little unpredictable, as you can imagine. Flights delayed, weather issues, operational challenges, and there was always something happening. And one day we had a visitor from corporate coming to give a presentation in one of our conference rooms. She was having some technical troubles getting her computer to connect to the screen, so I stepped in to help her get everything sorted. And while we were waiting for the system to load, we stopped and talked and had a casual conversation, where I went to school, what I was studying, what I hoped to do after graduation. And it was really nothing out of the ordinary. But during that conversation, she mentioned that she was working on launching a new program, and the idea was to have a group of interns continue working for United throughout their senior year of college. They would help recruit students, keep their pay, and keep their flight benefits. So when she described it, I immediately thought it sounded incredible. And the problem was that she told me that the program was only going to happen at a few universities. Purdue was unfortunately not on that list. Now, at that moment, I had 2 options. I could just nod and move on with that conversation, or I could be a bit more ambitious. So I asked her to give me 20 minutes. 20 minutes after her presentation to convince her why Purdue should be selected for this program. After her presentation, we sat down and talked, and I told her about the students here. I told her about the engineering talent, the aviation program, the business school, and the incredible work ethic that I see from the students around me every single day. I explained why I believe that the students here would thrive at United Airlines. And it was just a conversation, but it was a conversation that almost did not happen. 2 weeks later, I received an email from her, and she told me that Purdue had been added to the program, and she asked if I could help her connect with the university to build that partnership. Since then, I've spent the last 8 months serving as a campus ambassador for United, and actually through that position, landed my full-time offer as an associate analyst for their pricing and revenue management team. And when I look back at that moment, what stands out to me was how small that starting point was and how large the outcome was. Helping someone with a technical difficulty turned into a connection that later led me to my career after graduation. But conversations that shape us aren't always about careers, right? Some of the most meaningful relationships begin just as casually. A random introduction in a group project, a club event, a coffee spot, or a quick conversation that somehow turns into something much bigger over time. Some of the most important people in my life today started out as strangers on this campus. I met my fiance at a club call-out my freshman year, and some of the most closest people in my life I met in classes here on campus, and they will be standing next to me this summer as bridesmaids. And at the time, none of those moments felt life-changing, but looking back, they absolutely were. But relationships are only one part of the story. Meeting people introduces you to possibilities, but what ultimately shapes your path is what you do with those possibilities. That's why reflection is so critical. We all reach moments in our life where we have to pause and ask ourselves difficult questions. What do I actually want to do? What excites me? What choice feels right? For most of my life, I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. I loved public speaking, I loved debate, and I loved the idea of arguing a case in a courtroom. But when it came time to actually choose what I wanted to do, I sat and reflected about what I wanted my future to look like, and I realized that I actually did not know. I knew I loved math and science, but I didn't want to lock myself into one path before exploring all the options. So I chose engineering for the flexibility. The same thing led me to Purdue and later into industrial engineering because I could explore all the different disciplines before choosing which one I wanted. Each step, I paused, reflected, and chose what made the most sense at the time without rushing into something that I wasn't fully sure about. Now, two very important people taught me that lesson, to not rush into decisions. 4 years ago, my mom sent me to bring cookies to my neighbors, Linda and Wolf, who were both 80 at the time, or in their 80s. They asked me if I wanted to come in for tea, and I do not like tea, but I wanted to get to know them. They seemed friendly, so I said yes. Since that day, we've had tea together every single week. We talk about everything: life, family, politics, travel. They reflect on their past experiences, and I reflect on my current ones. And every time I leave, I'm reminded of something so important, that leadership doesn't begin by having all the answers. It begins with listening, learning, and staying open to the people around you. Because somewhere in the world, there's a conversation that you almost did not have. And that's why I believe that we're all just one conversation away from becoming the leaders that we're meant to be. Thank you.